Okay, we should be recording now. So,
I'll restate things. Before the recording started, we did a chair election, and no one was nominated other than me. So I think that I got it sort of by default, and I'm
Congrats.
continuing on as chair. Thanks. The second item that we're looking at is the open seat on the TOB. I will restate what I just said. Sorry, everyone who already heard it. Um, I think we have two things to discuss. One is what do we do for the current cycle, and the other is do we want to make any charter changes for subsequent cycles? And within the current cycle, I think that there's two fair things to do. One is basically to leave it as is, a no op. We just have an empty seat, and if there are any issues with the deadlock, then we escalate up to the trademark board. To me, I'm not really convinced that that's a big risk because we've never had a situation like that where we've had a 5-4 split before. So a 4-4 split in this case. The other option that we could do would be offer it up as an additional TDC seat for this cycle and allow the community to elect another representative. But I think that that's more complicated. And so let's move into discussion, and then we'll call for a vote at the end of this. Brandon, go ahead.
So my preference is to actually reverse the decisions and to look at how we might want to change the charter to fill vacancies now and then use that change to fill the vacancy. Because I think I'm kind of keying off a little bit of what Mike said, but if we have a policy in the charter, then we make that one change and that just automatically goes through the process. As soon as we make the charter change, we can start whatever that process is.
I don't think that's really reversing the order. That is basically saying that you don't want to leave a vacancy. And so the question then becomes, how do we fill the vacancy? And then you're saying we should fill the vacancy the same way this cycle as we would do in a charter change. I think my opinion here, but I'm just one of the votes here, would be I don't know that this vacancy really needs to be filled.
Yeah, I'm not strongly opposed to saying the vacancy doesn't need to be filled. I think we're doing pretty good as a board in general. We don't have debates and that stuff. I'm agreeing on that. I'm just, when I say reversing the order, I'm just reversing the order of instead of trying to figure out whether we want to fill the vacancy first, figure out, do we want to change the charter first? And then that can roll into automatically handling the vacancy at that point.
So I guess my point was it's a no-op to begin right now is a good answer. And then once we have a policy, as you said, then we could backfill. But I just keep the order where it's declare it a no-op for now, because we don't want to have some new special process that hasn't gone through amending therein right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's what Chris is saying in the chat, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't really get we can either decide to not do anything, which I'm actually in agreement with that for this year, for this cycle. Um, but that if we did strongly think we had to do something, it has to start with the charter because otherwise we don't really have the right to make a random decision.
Correct. I think, my 2 cents is no op is the quickest way to move forward, and then coming up with a proposed charter change for if we ever end up in this situation again. It could be limiting the number of seats, which, makes things maybe a little bit simpler. It could be empowering the TOB itself to appoint folks in the respective seat if they have a majority vote or something like that to fill that slot in case no one ran for it. There's multiple things we could do, but I think it requires a discussion and consensus of the group to put forth a charter change, basically.
Yep.
Another option I was considering is, do we want to just, if we have a vacancy from an election, so not enough people ran, just leave the nominations open until someone decides to run. And whenever we fill it, we fill it. If it was something that happened outside of an election, then turn it into another election unless we're so close to the next election, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I want to step back because you're starting to get into the weeds of like a specific proposal. So um, I want to hear from other people. We heard from me, we heard from Brandon, Mike, and Phil. I haven't heard from Sajay or Jeff yet, or Tianan. Like, do you have opinions on what we should do for the current cycle? Is a no-op something that you want, or do you think that this vacancy should actually be filled? All right, I'm going to call on people because no one's talking.
Yeah, and I would say I'm new here. I don't know any what the any precedent would be around this. Yeah, I don't know that I have any strong opinions on that, honestly.
We don't have precedent,
Yeah.
right? This is a new situation. So you being new here is not a problem. You're also an elected seat on the TOB, so you have an opinion.
Certainly more opinion than that empty seat does. I think leaving the seat empty is fine for this cycle. We probably should talk about what to do when this happens next cycle too, but yeah, I'm not stressed about it right now.
Sajay, I'm not sure if you're having audio problems or you're just not trying to talk. Yeah, you're not audible.
Mouth is moving, but no words come out.
I mean, you isn't lit up, so we know you're trying to talk. Do we blame Microsoft?
I think if it were Teams, we could blame Microsoft.
I'm sure Teams stole an exclusive lock to his microphone or something.
Remote audio. Whose audio are we listening to now?
Oh.
Probably having to run something to a VM or whatever.
Saying what?
Well, he's getting the audio on the
Yeah,
one.
Well,
the
while
one
we're,
other
while
side
we're waiting,
comment.
I wanted to get back to what you said in the chat, Brandon, while we're waiting for Sajay to fix his audio.
Oh, he might be here.
I agree that I think we have echoing. I agree that a no-op is the only thing that we would have to make a charter change to do anything else. The question that I'm asking here is, do we want to do something else, or is leaving the seat vacant an acceptable answer for this cycle? Right, you're talking about the mechanics of it. I'm talking about what is the decision that we want to make.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think the
Sajay.
reason I was pushing to flip the order there was mostly just because if we make the charter change to handle this in the future, we may at that point say, let's go ahead and run this now with whatever change we decide to make. But until we make the change, I don't think we can really make a decision there. Sorry, Sajay. I think
we can make this decision of, do we want to do, is the vacancy acceptable for the current cycle? That's the question that I'm asking right now. So I think Sajay is hopefully able to talk now.
Yeah, hopefully folks can hear me now. Is that okay? Yes,
Yep.
no? All right.
Yes.
I think given my vote was also to go for a no-op right now, because it's better we do a proper charter change and then come back. I think an arbitrary, hey, we need to fill the vacant seat there's no precedence to this one yet, right? So it would be a little hard to kind of explain why we did it if we did it. So that's kind of why I was saying but the second question of whether we need to fill the seat right now, I'm not sure. That is emergency or a lack of people on this TOB right now who aren't responding.
I think the only question I would phrase that might kind of get into what Sam and I are back and forth on here is, if we made a charter change, assuming we do, and I think we're going that direction, we kind of want to figure out how to handle vacancies in the future. Is there a reason to defer using that charter change to fill this vacancy and leave it intentionally vacant? Or should we just go ahead and use whatever charter change we make? And I don't know if we're ready to answer that question until we know what the charter change is.
We can certainly come back to that. Sort of the reason that I was thinking about this, or the way that I was thinking about this, is the charter as is does not have a mechanism to fill vacancies, which means that the people that were elected and the nominations that happened were not made with the idea that there might be vacancies that would be filled later. So for the current cycle, it's kind of a little bit of a rug pull to say, hey, we went through an election and we had this election, and then suddenly we're adding additional people to the TOB through a mechanism that wasn't there during the election. That's kind of the reason why I think it's important to have this, like, do we think that it's reasonable to like fill the vacancy at all for the current cycle? And then second from that, like, for future cycles, vacancies could happen again. I think there is a good reason to think about defining a mechanism to fill vacancies for future cycles. It just seems a little bit like, you know, we're elected under one set of ideas, and now that set of ideas is changing in a way that wasn't necessarily understood. And I see a hand from Tianan.
I think everything you just said was really compelling. And the only detail I would add is that the definition of cycle here is probably 2 years, not 1 year. Because
Yeah,
we're
I
elected
would,
for 2-year terms on alternating
the,
cycles.
the way that I would probably say this is the cycle for the members, right?
Mhm.
And then there's another cycle that's a year offset from this. It is the TDC cycle. And so I agree it's a 2-year thing, but we can define a mechanism that then lets us fill a vacancy in either of those cycles, right? But like this empty seat is a member seat, not a TDC seat. And then if there's a vacancy next year, that would be a TDC vacancy, not a member vacancy. Okay. I'm just looking for consensus here, but it sounds like we're mostly on the same page, I think. Cool. Do we want to take a vote on whether we want to fill this vacancy for this cycle? Or do we want to defer that until we've had the discussion about what a charter change would look like?
A couple of comments by Chris. I want to read those real quick.
I think you could do a vote just for consensus on doing a no op for now, and then my suggestion is in the coming months, Jory and I could put together some suggested charter changes to prevent this from happening again. That maybe empowers the TOB to fill that seat somehow. And then you could decide if those changes, get approved, then you could decide to maybe fill that seat that's currently empty or do nothing. But now you have the full power versus, trying to fly by wire, essentially.
Okay. I think that's fair. Let's take a vote on the vacancy situation for right now. And then let's move on to a discussion of different options for what charter changes could look like and the various ideas that have been talked about there. Jory, how do you want to run this?
So I just defined our proposal is to agree to leave the spot vacant for this cycle, no op. At future point, propose a charter change to address the situation if it arises again. So most of my projects operate by consensus only and would not take a vote on this because it seems like verbally everybody is 1000% there on this path. So I think I'm not sure if your charter requires you to vote on this. I'm sorry. I should have looked that up.
I don't believe that we're required
No,
to
yeah,
vote
no,
on this.
not in this case.
Yeah, so I think we've reached consensus that
Okay.
no op is the move and we can move on.
If you're opposed, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay. So let's move on and talk about what possible charter changes could look like. There were a couple. There was the one that I shared about making the vacancy open to TDC. There is a suggestion in the thread of reducing the total seats in TOB from 9 down to 7, and then having it be a 4 and 3 split instead of a 5 and 4 split.
I also offer just
there
the
was-
TOB filling the seat via a majority vote, like appointing.
Appointment would be another one. Trying to look and see if there was anything else in the discussion earlier.
The one I was thinking was to reopen nominations, and whenever the nomination comes in, just fill it with the next one. That would have happened if someone had just got it before the deadline.
So that's sort of a kind of foot race to fill a vacancy.
Yeah, it's basically extending the deadline until someone decides to nominate.
Say, like in most Linux Foundation organizations, usually the body that governs itself generally has the power to kind of appoint or restructure. So it's kind of where my suggestion came from. I don't know, Jory, if you have other, you know, how you all do it in JDF land across your things, but generally.
Yeah, it's a little, I'm trying to kind of map in my brain how this works relative to how we would suggest it for any of our other standards and specifications projects. One of the critical differences is in those projects, when a organization or person joins a group and joins it to particularly in a leadership capacity, they're typically also making licensing commitments there. That is kind of a function here in OCI, where at the trademark board level, those companies, once we cut a new spec release, are also making a commitment to license and e-claims that they have as a function of being part of the trademark board and having joined the project. So one thing that's on my mind aside from all this, and this is something that, I'm excited to read the charter a little bit more closely with Chris and propose some changes maybe, is the fact that we want people to join OCI. Not necessarily because we want them to join for their cash money dollars, although that's nice. It's because we want them to make the commitments to the technology and protect the technology. So that is something that I'm not sure how to fit that into this conversation, but that's in my head. Uh, yeah, sorry.
No, I think
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
I want to ask about that, or I want to talk about that. I think that's an interesting perspective. Are you worried that if we were to reduce the number of seats on the TOB, that might influence negatively the participation in OCI because there would be fewer opportunities to contribute to the governance?
I think these things are related. And what I want to understand is how. Because maybe not, maybe so. It is a benefit to membership that you get to appoint someone to serve on the TOB, or you get to participate in the process of maybe being on the TOB. And that may or may not impact interest in joining. So these are related, but I don't know. I don't want to speak to motivation.
So, question when we're talking about how other groups handle this, and where you mentioned that sometimes they empower the board to take over, do they have that similar split between member companies doing some nominations and community doing the other nominations.
ENCF does, at least in my there's the governing board seats. There's seats appointed by the actual TOC itself. So there's kind of different brackets of
And the
seats. We've
board
never had
isn't. Okay.
we've never had an issue where there hasn't been, a gap in terms of seats to fill. Not necessarily. There's always a lot
Yeah.
more interest, so there's always kind of an election. We even had to expand our seats once from 9 to 11, just because of that interest. But I think personally, like 7 to 11 is like a sweet spot for a number of seats and kind of a technical, body. Anything more becomes too crazy. Anything less, it's just TM. Yeah, yep, that is true.
I do have his concern. I was saving that one till later, but the reason I
Yeah.
was looking at the split between the two different groups was, is there any risk where the board goes in and makes a decision that takes away power from the
Yeah.
member companies?
I think it's good to have a healthy split. Generally, we've never seen that happen, at least in my world and time at the Linux Foundation. Sometimes there's conflict of what to focus on, but never, stripping power. It's just like a vote happens and then it goes one way or another. I think it's important to have the split of like companies that support the project and then the maintainers that actually do the work, right? And you could decide that maybe now, like, you could flip that where maybe there should be more TDC seats than members. Like there's discussions we could have on that for sure, because I think OCI is in a completely different state than it was a decade ago. It's a lot more, stable, less drama to Sam's point. So I think things are a lot more simple. So
Yeah, if the member companies didn't elect someone, we took a seat away from them and gave it to the community to elect.
Yeah.
I just worry that's kind of going against some of our goals.
I think people would be okay. Like if members, for example, didn't, like we try to ping so many people like, hey, nominations are open, go put some on. Otherwise it's going to be too late. If people truly miss the window and there's a spot available, I don't think the members would have any issue if the TOB just decided to go appoint someone. Like there's people that were elected into that slot and are trusted for their best judgment. I don't, that would be zero issues in my opinion. Yeah, to Sam's point, yeah. So, and I did try to reach out to everyone possible, but sometimes folks, miss the window. But I do think empowering the TOB to fill slots is a fairly elegant, solution if this ever happens, happens again. Because in this case, you could go appoint Ram Kumar in this case if all y'all agreed to that. So I don't know. I don't know how we want to, like, Jory and I could take feedback from all y'all on this call and kind of come up with some proposed changes and then bring it up either at another meeting or we could just do it on GitHub async and kind of see if we kind of get consensus of what to do and run some scenarios for you so we don't kind of spend the whole time talking about governance on this particular call. But it's all up to you how you want to handle it.
I was trying to look at because we know that our missing member Alexis Sarai had another thing that he wrote on the issue. I was trying to see exactly what he was suggesting, and it looks like from my read of that, it's suggesting another election. So that is another option, right? We basically have the give the seat over to TDC. We have allow the TOB to appoint or just run another election as kind of the three options that we have to fulfill or to fill a vacancy. Listening to this
Still has to
discussion,
be written down, right? It still has to be, I think,
Yes.
written down what we would
Yes.
do, right? So
yes, we still need an amendment to change the charter for any of those to go forward. But those are the three options. Or sorry, actually, there's four, because the fourth option is reducing the size of the TOB. Those are the four options that we have to deal with this. I think that
We got 5 in the minutes.
Yeah,
of
I
the
got
meeting right now.
5.
I think my HackMD is not updating. That's why I didn't see the. Okay. Right, we have 5. Okay. I think that my opinion was sort of, before we had this discussion, opening it up to the TDC. Based on what I'm hearing, I think I'm shifting more toward just giving the TOB the ability to appoint. One caveat or one concern that I have with that is, if we're looking at the TOB to do an appointment here, effectively we're giving the TOB or requiring the TOB to negotiate internally on who that appointment should be. And I think that's fair, but one limit that I would want to apply to that would be basically say the nomination or the appointed seat can only last for the duration of the current makeup of the TOB, which would mean 1 year, rather than the full 2-year cycle for a normal elected TOB seat. And that would give the subsequent TOB that convenes at the start of the next election cycle the ability to redo that negotiation and go through nomination again.
So I think I believe I agree with the direction you're headed. I think we should go with Chris's original idea of saying that the TOB may assign, right? And I think right after that, for a term, as you're mentioning, Sam, restricted to the next election, okay, which could be, we have a choice then of deciding we want it to be in within a couple of months, right? And find the group that was supposed to be nominating the person that's been left out, right? Like the members would nominate again one person, right?
You're
Make sense?
suggesting that we'd kind of do both. We'd appoint for a short period of time and then run a subsequent election.
May. I would use the language may, but not must. Yeah.
You're basically saying that you want to give the TOB power to make a decision at the time that a vacancy happens, and that could either be to appoint or to run a subsequent election. I think that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Just keeping in mind that the subsequent election, unless this was happened a year and a half into the term, the next election is going to end up being 2 elections, because you're going to have the vacancy plus whichever other year of elections are happening.
That's why I was trying to time box it. But you wouldn't want to get in a situation where 2 or 3 people left, and then, right, the people left on didn't want to assign somebody, or 2 or 3 additional people. It could snowball.
So I would propose, just in the interest of time, because there's 2 other topics. Sounds like there's a preference toward that particular. I have it listed in the notes as sort of option 2-ish, we'll say. For maybe Chris and I to get back with you guys about a specific charter proposal. And we can discuss that in GitHub issues and or on the mailing list. But for now, we have closed out what we're doing now, which is nothing, and what we're doing, what we want to do in the future, which is update the charter to deal with this edge case. And
Okay, I want to address the other couple of options just really quickly before we move on, because I know Brandon was really looking about leaving the nominations open. I just want to cover that briefly. My big concern with that is if you're basically saying we're going to leave nominations open until there are enough nominations for a seat. It's another way of just saying the next person that's nominated gets the seat, which is a little bit of a race, and that doesn't
They-
seem like necessarily a pattern that I would really
But-
agree with. I think that the ability for the TOB to run a subsequent election with a different nomination date gives the basically the same thing that you're asking for. You let there be an opportunity for more people to elect it, but it removes the possibility of there being like, hey, two people missed it. There's one seat that's open, and someone got their nomination in a day earlier than the next person. So
The only reason I was going that direction was because if they got their nomination in a few weeks earlier or whenever that window was, they would have gotten elected.
Yeah, but it's
Because
the responsibility of the member or the TDC to get the nominations in on time. Like, I think then it becomes the TOB's job to figure out what we want to do and fill that vacancy.
yeah,
The
I don't disagree with the concerns. I'm just looking at this from a kind of a practical of do we want to go through a whole election process and everything else? And hey, if you had gotten your nomination in just before the nomination cutoff, you would have gotten elected no matter what. So it was a race to that cutoff.
But
So
I mean,
if
it's
it's a
not a
race to
race
whenever
to that
someone
cutoff.
submits,
one day, 1 week, yeah, as soon as you start being flexible past end dates, like how much more flexible do we need to be, right? Like,
It's also not a race, right? So there were 5 seats available. If there were 6 nominations, there would have been one person that would not be elected, right? So if there are, because there were 4 people that were nominated, all 4 got seated, and there's one vacancy, and you're saying if we would leave the nomination open, then it is the next person who would be nominated who would get that. So that turns that into a race versus the model that Mike was saying of like, do we want to run another election later at our discretion? Let's just say, hey, we're going to run another election. There is 1 seat available. There is a date for nominations, and that date can be like passed. And maybe there's going to be 2 people that are nominated, and then you actually have a vote. Right? It turns into an election instead of a race. So that's my concern with that. And I think the other thing that we mentioned, but we didn't sort of close out on, is reducing the number of seats. It sounds like no one was really in favor of that, so I just wanted to mention that we kind of don't want to go down that path.
so the one caveat there on just kind of circling back on the race thing, if you turned into a whole election every time, it could just be an infinite number of elections. Because, who knows how long it's going to take for someone to finally go through that whole process of nominating. And so it's
Right,
just,
which is why I think we said we want to give the TOB the option to do an appointed seat.
yeah. And that's why I'm not strongly opposed to the TOB appointment, but I was just saying my preference would be for the nomination. Not strong, but that's my preference.
Okay, I think we're close on this topic, unless Tianan, do you actually want to talk about the thing that you put in chat?
I just want it to live rent free in everybody's heads so that everyone starts thinking about this and it's not just me. So we'll leave it there for now.
Okay.
So generous of you. Generous.
Okay, next thing up was the copyright headers.
Feel like this could be really easy if we just say copyright the OCI contributors. If we think that's a good copyright header and then just run with that everywhere. And if there need to be more,
why don't I do this? Chris and Jory, what is the legal guidance from LF? I think we should follow the legal guidance from LF and close that question.
Yeah, so there's a wonderful post that this will be actually my second time sharing it today. So let me pull it up. That's basically by one of our attorneys, Steve Winslow. Copyright best practices. But long story short, if I will summarize this for you, it says typically to use copyright contributors to the project name. Easy peasy. Please do that.
Okay, I propose that we just adopt the LF guidance here.
And then I think a bunch of the discussion in there between other folks was whether or not we need to open this up for others. And I think that's already covered in some of the LF guidance as well, that says if someone has a major contribution and they want to have their copyright in the file as well, that's up to them in that scenario.
Okay. Sounds like we have consensus on just adopting the LF guidance.
And is there anything, I mean, I can follow up on the thread to address this with Alexa and for implementation, or how can I help on that one?
I think someone needs to do a survey to figure out what needs to change where we're not already in line with the LF guidance, right?
So I think we need to make the change in the TOB first, saying this is going to be our guidance to all groups. And then from there, we would go forward and go to the different groups and say, hey, can we update this?
Okay, that's not a charter change. So are you just suggesting that we go stick this as another file, like TOB recommendations or something in the TOB repo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, happy to. Hold on.
So now you guys like races. I see how it is.
Okay, and then the last thing was from Chris, I think.
Yeah,
Wanna-
I mean, I don't know if Red Hat has reached out to members of the TOB um, yet, but they have a bit of a proposal potentially doing a new type of, I call like a bootable image, spec. Let me go see if I go share something in chat here. They don't have a proposal formalized yet, but they were just curious if the OCI would be interested in kind of coming up with spec for like bootable artifacts, basically. So I don't know if anyone has any opinions or thoughts here, but they may be interested in doing a proposal if OCI was willing to accept.
My immediate question would be whether they have a second party besides themselves who is interested in implementing such a thing and following a standard with them.
That I'm not sure of yet. So that's I think they're in proposal formation and gathering interested parties phase.
Yeah, that was my question too. I can think of others that would be similarly interested in this, but I just don't know if anyone has come together and said, yes, we actually want to standardize this.
What's the change that we're looking at to OCI? Is this a new spec? Is this a modification to the image spec?
It would be a new spec. I think that's what they proposed. So I think they're going to propose a new project. Is probably how we'd go about it. Yeah, I mean, we could do a working group. I think they're just trying to figure out how to move forward and whether OCI would be a good fit. Otherwise, they may be interested in trying another avenue, CNCF or some other avenue to build a community.
I don't want to influence anyone too much. This seems fine for me to be in OCI as a thing, but I would not want it to just be Red Hat. Like to Tian's point, like there should be a second party here. If it's going to be a standard, there can't just be a standard from one vendor, and that's the only vendor that's complying with it. There's not really a value to that. But I think if there are other parties that also want this, then yeah, I think OCI seems like a reasonable home.
Yeah. I mean, if there's no opposition, I'll let them know that they could propose via normal OCI channels, just something to kind of give all y'all a heads up of something that may be coming your way.
Yeah, I mean, my comment's really not different, but it's just interesting that their sentence communities like Universal Blue have resorted to blah blah blah. Like, I think they need to find a different problem statement. Like one community not being able to like conform, like a spec won't help that. So unless I'm misunderstanding what that statement means, but anyway, yeah, if it's not, yeah, if there's not more people rallying around the need for this specific thing, like I don't know why you would do a standard.
Yeah, that problem statement reads like they want tooling rather than a standard. But yeah.
Something I'm noticing, I'm just gonna talk ad hoc here. Something I'm noticing is that a lot of communities have this interest in specifications and standards development, but don't necessarily have a lot of, even if they are big companies that have background in doing this, they themselves aren't really sure, how to phrase how to talk about it. And I would want us to be, I'd like us to be, helpful on that front. If there's interest on their part in bringing the project in, there's some substantial issues if there's not other people that want to work on it. So that's one problem, but they may not understand how to think about the tooling versus the spec question. And if we can be helpful to them in that, that would be pretty dope. Because I think that's just a reality of developers coming into standards these days don't necessarily have a lot of the prior experience or anything.
Are you suggesting we should update documentation in our like new project forms, or
I'm suggesting I think that we see, like working with these communities can be super intimidating. And maybe that's not going to happen here, but I'm just saying out loud that like it can be really intimidating for a group like this to propose that they bring some work in. And I think we're nice people. I think y'all are nice, super nice. You're a lot of fun. I want to make sure that like if we don't come across too harsh, if that makes sense. By saying, oh, this problem statement is all wrong. Was like, oh, this is a great stab at this, but like let's make this look more like this, smell more like a spec project because it seems like you're talking about tooling, and just be a little bit like helpful, which I'm happy to do. But it's just worth saying that stuff out loud.
I like the way Tinon phrased it, which was, are we looking at an implementation or are we looking at a specific tool? And if it's a specific tool, that's an implementation, that's not really a specification. But if they're defining something that someone else could write a competing implementation for and then get that community together, now you've got two people that are doing the same thing. I think we're getting to the point that now you're looking at something that OCI can start to standardize.
Oh, Chris, you will go back to this
Yeah.
person?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
I'm gonna go let them know. We obviously have standardized procedures for proposing things, so I think just getting it out in the open is the best way to do it.
With a few minutes left, we didn't really cover what happens if you have a vacancy that was triggered from multiple people in the same company, all of a sudden merger or something like that happening. Do we want to adjust that with the last couple minutes we've got?
We can. I think it's the same thing. I don't think it's substantially different from there being a vacancy from not enough nominations.
Right.
So are we saying it'd be a TOB board decision?
We do have an additional wrinkle there in that historically, anytime we've had an event like that, the parties have been fairly reasonable and one of them has opted to step down. What if they weren't?
For example, when IBM bought Red Hat, they were a completely separate company and still are, right? Kept at arm's length. And they were both originally members of the OCI, right? So
But if I remember correctly, we did deal with that with sort of cordial agreement on who was going to represent IBM and Red Hat. I think Tina's question is what happens when the all parties don't want to step down. Yeah, that was part of that bigger set of changes that Alexa was, proposing years ago, which, yeah, I did.
I think I missed.
I think someone might have been caught on a background mic. I think my personal opinion on this is actually that situation where there are, say, 3 TOB members and none of them want to step down, is that probably should go up to the trademark board and not be a TOB thing at that point, because you don't have enough people on the TOB to be able to answer that.
Sorry, I was laughing too hard at Phil's comment there. Were you saying that would turn into a TOB board decision?
Sorry, who were you asking? What
I was asking Sam to
Oh,
reiterate.
Yeah, I think if you have, the provision in our charter basically says that if the TOB can't come to consensus, that goes to the trademark board. And I think that if you have, say, 3 people that
Yeah.
suddenly are now working for the same entity, right, and we only allow 2 of those, and none of those people want to step down, that is an example of there not being consensus, and that should go up to the trademark board at that point.
So that would not be consensus among the 3 members, but it could be consensus among the remaining board.
Are you suggesting that 6 members of the board would vote out the other 3 people or something like that? I don't think that we have,
or vote into.
I don't think it's, how do I phrase this? I don't really want to write something in the charter that gives that kind of power to a subset of the TOB to, expel members, things like that. I think that's a trademark board responsibility. And at that point, in the trademark board, there is one seat per member company. So those 3 people would have 1 seat among them, and then the other people that would be making the decision in the trademark board would be all from different member companies at that point. Realistically, I don't think we'll get there. Like if such an acquisition happens again or something like that, or people change employers, like I think all of the people on the TOB are reasonable, and we probably will have exactly the same kind of cordial, like we'll decide among ourselves someone's going to resign, then there will be a vacancy, and then we can go through the process that we're just talking about to how to fill that vacancy.
So you bring up a good point that the members only have 1 seat, but there's also people that get elected from the community that could potentially be a second seat. possibly more, depending on how that election goes. You could have 2 and then 1 or something on the other side. I'm trying to think if there's a way that this can be pushed back to the member company of saying pick 1 person that solves it at that point.
Well, the restriction is based on the member companies. The restriction, it says that you can't have more than 2 people that work for the same entity on the TOB.
Yeah.
So that's how it gets pushed back to the companies.
And I don't think that solves the problem in a way that I was hoping for, which was that we could push that decision back to the member company. I was hoping to say, look, your election gives you 1 person you can vote for, but I think there are scenarios out there where you could have people elected on the community election that might still cause that number
I
to go
think that
above.
still does push it back to the company. If you have, say, 2 people that hold TDC seats that work for Red Hat, I'm going to pick on Red Hat and IBM because this isn't a problem anymore and it happened well. And I don't know, I was looking at Mike when I said that. So say there were 2 people on TDC that worked for Red Hat at the time that IBM bought Red Hat, and IBM bought Red Hat and had 1 person that was a member seat. So that would be the 3 people that work for the same company. If these 3 people couldn't come to a decision among themselves, and it went to the trademark board might say, okay, IBM, who do you want to keep on this board? And then IBM can decide, okay, such and such person is going to resign.
Is this time boxed, by the way?
We booked this for an hour, so we are now at time technically. Yep.
I
Bill's
think we
got to
probably
drop for
all need
another.
to drop.
Good
Okay.
meeting, everybody.
Yep. I'll send these out to everyone in the recording, and we'll follow up with the next steps.
Tori and Chris, I can stay on for a minute if you need to close out.
Sure. Yeah. I'll meeting adjourned. Sam.
Yep.
Thanks all.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
So